I begin this week's reminder to myself and everyone over here to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, uthkurullah, to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our hearts, in our minds, in our tongues, in our thoughts, in our intentions. To remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way we carry ourselves. To remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our appearances. To remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our actions, in our interactions, in our business transactions. To remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times. And the second reminder that I share with myself and everyone over here is to remember at all times the purpose of us being here. It is said that the two most important days in a person's life, the first most important day in a person's life is the day that they were born, right? That's when we start our journey over here. And the most important day after the day a person is born is the day they realize why. We look around in the world at every single thing that is created, every single thing that is manufactured, everything out there. It all serves a purpose. It's not meant to just exist. It's not meant for time to pass over it. Things are not made or created for things to expire, to disintegrate, to rot away over time. Every single thing has a purpose behind it. And as human beings, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also given us a purpose. Not to just live our lives, eat, drink, be merry and happy, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent us over here for the fulfillment of His worship. And fulfilling that worship doesn't necessarily mean, or it is not restricted and limited to worship facing in a certain direction, worship that is required to wash ourselves before, worship that has a structure of guidelines, worship that is offered in a certain mechanism, in a certain way. But whatever we do, from the minute we wake up till the minute and second we knock out and go to sleep, every second of every hour of that day is meant to be spent in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so much so that our sleep is also considered a worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If our mind is in the right place, if our heart is in the right place, and if we truly remember the purpose that we are here for, the purpose of worship. And in that purpose, in fulfilling that purpose of worship, there are going to be good times, there are going to be bad times. There are going to be moments of joy, there are going to be moments of sadness. There's going to be progress, there's going to be setback. And this is just the nature of what life is. If you are someone who does not feel pain, then you are not truly living life. If you are someone people who are bedridden and on medications, many people get to a point where they don't feel any pain, they don't feel anything. But as human beings, we feel. We have emotions, we have feelings. I want to share with you one story, and this has to do with the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Asma bint Umais radiyallahu anha. She was the wife of Ja'far radiyallahu anhu. So Asma and Ja'far, Mr. and Mrs., they are amongst the group of those Sahaba who early on in seerah, in the 5th year, to go and travel to Eritrea, Ethiopia, that region known as Habasha at that time. One of the reasons behind that was to flee the persecution that was increasing. And another reason was to get a chunk of Muslims, the early believers, off the radar, off the grid in Mecca, in order to calm things down with the escalating situation in Mecca. Just get out of the picture, move somewhere. And at different parts in seerah, people returned. There was a group that returned immediately after for a particular incident. Then more joined them. But over time, after the migration to Medina, certain groups of companions, they ended up making their move to Medina. But the Prophet ﷺ instructed Ja'far radiallahu anhu and a small group of early Muslims and believers to stay put. Not for 1 year, 2 years after migration, 3 years after migration, but for a solid chunk of 7 years. And there came a time after the Treaty of Hudaybiyah when the threat from Quraysh neutralized. The Prophet ﷺ concentrated his attention and effort to neutralize another threat that was coming. That was from an area about 100 miles north of Medina, a huge, bigger than Medina village and oasis called Khaybar. And this is the area where not just this was an area that did not only house certain tribes of the Jewish community, but those who were exiled from Medina because of their treachery, because of treason, their lives were spared. 2 tribes whose lives were spared were relocated over there. But they continued to work behind the scenes. So in order to neutralize this threat, the Prophet ﷺ took a group, the same group that went for Umrah with him, to Khaybar. Khaybar was put under siege and it fell to the Muslims. It was a huge victory. By far in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, the biggest gain or monetary outcome that came was in the aftermath of Khaybar. Before going off to Khaybar, the Prophet ﷺ sent a message to Habasha with a Sahabi to summon all of those people back. And as they were wrapping up with Khaybar, who shows up? His beloved cousin Ja'far radiallahu anhu and the entire crew that came over from Habasha. They met the Prophet ﷺ in Khaybar. The Prophet ﷺ was so overwhelmed with joy to see them that he states, I don't know if I'm happier about getting Khaybar down, winning over Khaybar, or Qudumi Ja'far, or because Ja'far came back. The Prophet ﷺ embraced them and celebrated their return to the point where he allotted them shares in all of the gains of Khaybar, which was a huge share. Now, going back to Asma radiallahu anha, once they came back to Medina, she went to, obviously, you've been out of the picture for such a long time. You're back in Medina now. You want to catch up with old friends, see how everyone is doing. So she went to meet her friend Hafsa. Hafsa, the daughter of Umar radiallahu anhu. Hafsa, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So as she visited Hafsa's house and they were catching up, having a conversation, having a good time, Umar radiallahu anhu, he visits his daughter and he asks, oh, who is this? Hafsa says, oh, this is Asma. Now, this is Asma bint Umays, not Asma bint Abu Bakr. So Umar radiallahu anhu says, oh, al-Habashiyatu hadi, al-Bahriyatu hadi. Oh, that Asma, the one who lived in Abyssinia, al-Bahriya. Oh, the traveler of the sea. He made this remark. And he was making this remark. So after he said this, Asma said, yes, that one. You know, sometimes we think, or for example, us who are living here, our relatives overseas or in other countries maybe think, oh, wow, you live in America. They probably think that we have it so good over here and so awesome over here, right? But in reality, right, for us living over here versus those overseas, especially with means, yeah, we have to do everything over here. We have to clean up after ourselves. You have to take care of the house, take care of the kids. A lot of people don't have the help to take care of all of these things. So, oh, look at you living in Abyssinia, right? Traveling the sea. And then Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, سَبَقْنَاكُمْ بِالْهِجْرَةِ فَنَحْنُ أَحَقُّ بِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم مِنْكُمْ. All these years while you were in Abyssinia, we beat you to the migration. Like you just showed up now, year 7. And he was teasing her Because those 7 years were very tough years. The first 6 years, especially before the Sulh of Hudaybiyah, these were really tough years for that early Muslim community. Badr happened, Uhud happened, all of the ghazawat in between, the battle of Ahzab, where the entire city for a month was put in the state of emergency and constant alarm. They went through all of these hardships and experiences. So who was there to support the Prophet ﷺ? Who was there to hold everything down? It was those people who lived in Medina. فَنَحْنُ أَحَقُّ بِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ مِنْكُمْ. We have more right over the Prophet ﷺ than you do. Now, this was coming out of a place of love for the Prophet ﷺ. Each one of the companions wanted to be the favorite of the Prophet ﷺ. And they all strived to do this. They all wanted to be that person who the Prophet ﷺ would remember in a heartbeat. They wanted to be closest to him. Now, the Prophet ﷺ expressed his joy, his happiness on their return. So he's making it clear to her that, look, we're closer to him. You just showed up now. Okay. So how do you think Asma radiallahu anha would respond to that? Yeah, you're right. Okay. You're Umar. No. She snapped. She snapped. She got very upset. And she said, Umar, you're a liar. You lied. Wallahi, you were with the Prophet ﷺ. When you guys felt hungry, you had someone to feed you. When you needed guidance, you had someone to guide you. وَكُنَّا فِي دَارٍ وَكُنَّا فِي دَارِ الْبَغْضَاءِ فِي الْحَبَشَةِ. We were in a very hostile situation in Habasha. Now, yes, the king An-Najashi did give asylum to the Muslims. He did give a space of refuge to the Muslims. And then he himself accepted Islam. But there was a lot of civil unrest that happened in the aftermath of his accepting Islam. He faced harsh opposition to the point where his power, his authority was put into question, and there were attempts to overthrow him, attempts on his life, to the point where the Muslims at that time, knowing that Najashi was the only shield they had to stay in hiding. They would make dua for Najashi. They were constantly under this fear and threat of being exterminated, so much so that while all this was going on, Najashi made sure that he had 2 boats ready to make sure that, hey, if I go down, make sure these people get on this boat and go back home. And she said, وَذَلِكَ فِي اللَّهِ وَفِي رَسُولِهِ. We weren't just chilling in Habasha. We weren't just living a comfortable life over there. We did this for Allah, and we did this for the Prophet ﷺ. And not just that, she didn't end it there. She said, Wallahi, la at'amu ta'aman wa la ashrabu sharaban hatta adhkura ma qulta li Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. I'm not going to eat and drink. I'm not having another meal until I tell the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam about this statement you said. Wa kunna nukhafu wa nu'dha. We were constantly put under threat. We were under so much hardship. And you can say and assume that we were just chilling over there. She rushed to the Masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting there with a crowd, and she comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she says that Umar came, and this is what he said. He said that these people are closer to you than us. What did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said? Laysa bi ahaqqa bi minkum. He's not closer to me than you all. وَلِأَصْحَابِهِ هِجْرَةً وَاحِدَةً وَلَكُمْ أَنْتُمْ أَهْلَ السَّفِينَةِ هِجْرَةً. Yes, they did migrate, albeit, but they migrated once. And you, O people of the boat, you all migrated twice. When she heard this, she was so overcome with joy that she started to go and tell everyone what the Prophet ﷺ said in regards to that group of Muslims who stayed in Abyssinia, to the point where all of those who came back from Habasha or who had gone to Habasha in general, they all came to Asma to confirm, hey, tell us what he said again. Hey, we heard this. Tell us exactly what he said. Tell us exactly what he said. And they all started to celebrate that the Prophet ﷺ highlighted and put a spotlight on the sacrifice and the hardship that they did endure, while in the minds of other people, it may have not been so prevalent. It may have not been, may not be aware of the fact that what was going on. Asma radiallahu anha says, "Ma min ad-dunya shay'un hum bihi afrah wa la a'zam fi anfusihim mimma qala lahum Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." There was no statement greater, and that no statement that brought them more joy than what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. So the point of me sharing this with you is that just like Asma radiallahu anha and those early migrants, just because they were not in the picture at that time, just because their hardship, their struggles, their setback was not known by the rest of the community at that time, did not mean that they were not going through sufferings and hardship. Brothers and sisters, as we sit here, and right now exactly it's 98 degrees, excessive heat warning. We are getting there, right? We're not quite there yet. The best is yet to come. And for those of us who have come back from Hajj, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your Hajj, your sacrifice, your hardship, your struggle. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow you to see every cent of money that you spent for Hajj on the mizan of your hasanat, and all of the sacrifices and hardship that were endured on the mizan of your hasanat. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow every drop of sweat to weigh heavy in the mizan of hasanat, right? And subhanallah, what, over 1,100 people confirmed, much more than that, passed away because of heat during Hajj. As we are sitting here in this masjid, climate controlled. As we go back to our cars, climate controlled. As we go back to our homes, climate controlled. Or if someone has issues with the AC, soon to be fixed. Whatever situation we are in, we should be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that blessing and being in that situation that we are in. Because even though we don't see poverty around us, even though we may not see hardship around us, struggling and suffering around us, and you know what? There are, not just to say that everyone over here is smooth sailing, but we don't know who amongst our congregation under this roof right now is struggling, is going through a hardship. For most people, they wear a smile, they wear a mask. You know, we in general, as a community, if you're not in the field of medicine, you probably never wore a mask before COVID. But there are many brothers and sisters and children in our community for a very long time who have been wearing a mask, who have been hiding their struggles and their hardships and their challenges and the suffering that they are going through, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, whatever it may be. And this is something that we learn from Islam. وَمَنْ يَسْتَعْفِفْ يُعِفَّهُ اللَّهُ. Whoever seeks iffah, whoever seeks chastity, whoever seeks to cover their situation from others, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants them a way out of that situation. But just because we may not be going through hardship, or we may not see people going through hardship, we don't see people begging or people in a dissolute situation, doesn't mean that there are hundreds and thousands and millions of people who are not going through things that are considered horrible situations to be in. One case in point, our brothers and sisters in Gaza, for example. We can come here, pray, and leave without having to worry about, we die whenever we want, whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes for us to die, in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes us to see our end. But overall, in general, we know what we are going to have for lunch. We pretty much have an idea of what's going to happen in the evening. We go about our day not thinking about demise, not thinking about death, not thinking about not having at the end of the day. But there are some people who live with their life in the palm of their hand, constantly having to hold on to it, looking over their shoulder, looking above their head, looking underneath them, looking to the right, looking to the left. And if we are not in this situation, we should consider this a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Man asbaha aminan fi sirbihi, mu'afan fi jasadihi, وعنده قوت يومه فكأنما حيزت له الدنيا بحذافيرها. If you wake up in the morning and you are safe and secure, aminan fi sirbihi, you are secure in your home. mu'afan fi jasadihi, everything seems to work. Yeah, there's maybe a little pain here and there in the joints, but everything overall is in good to go condition. The car started. Okay, I'll get from place A to B. وعنده قوت يومي, you open your fridge, you got enough food for the day, you are sitting on top of the world, my friend. فكأنما حيزت له الدنيا بحذافيرها. There are people who are living in tents. They're in this time of the year with no provisions for the current meal, let alone having a fridge full of food. So much food that you think, what should I warm up? Sometimes the fridge will have so much food, there's nothing to eat. Let's order something. Sometimes we'll walk into our closet. What should I wear? There's nothing to wear. Subhanallah. I mean, the spirit and essence of Islam is for us to, yes, enjoy the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us, has gifted on us, but at the same time, to have a heart and a mind that is conscious about the sufferings of other people. To think about these things. And this is the lesson that we learn from Asma radiallahu anha. That look, don't think that just because, I was out of the picture, or I have a smile on my face, or I just came back and I got this big share from Khaybar, that, you know what? Yeah, I've been like literally for them smooth sailing. It's not smooth sailing for people. Not just throughout the world, but even in our own city. We don't know who is going through what. Right now, we are enjoying time with our children. There's a janazah after the second prayer today. Someone is grieving the loss of their loved one, of their dad, of their son, of their brother, of their husband, or of their mother, daughter, wife. Subhanallah, or sister. So these are things that people constantly go through. And for those who are not going through something at the moment, our test in that is to be available emotionally, mentally, spiritually for someone who is. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by time, the greatest asset that we have. Time can be spent, but it cannot be bought, it cannot be earned. Time is something that is the only thing a person will wish that they have when it's time for them to leave. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. Everyone is in loss. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Except those who believe. That's the first anchor. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. And then you back that belief by doing what is right. Second anchor. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. And you remind each other. Wasiyah, tawasaw, enjoin upon each other haqq. If you see me out of line, remind me. If I see you out of line, I remind you. So constantly keeping each other on alignment. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And who are constantly enjoining and encouraging each other. بِالصَّبْرِ. Be strong. Be strong. Sometimes we may fail to seek the inspiration that we need to be strong from the knowledge of religion that we have. Sometimes we may need just to hear it from another person. And we are hearing that loud and clear from our brothers and sisters in Gaza, what the meaning of is to be strong. For those of you who missed the announcement early, subhanallah, in about an hour, there is a 9-year-old boy who is arriving at DFW from Gaza with his mother, an amputee as a result of the genocide that's going on. He is one of the exceptions, the fortunate ones, who happen to get out of that situation, cross over the border into Egypt, and have arrangements lined up for him to come here to seek treatment. And the pictures that I saw, he's so happy, so looking forward to this. A 9-year-old boy. How many 9-year-olds do we have over here? How many 9-year-olds do we know? Imagine that. Imagine not having a leg for the rest of their life. But guess what? Stay strong. Stay patient. There is light at the end of the tunnel. So through this is just one example of, the height of the situation. People over here locally, there is a drive by the Ma'ruf organization for fans, for refugees who have moved to the Dallas area. Not everyone can afford to keep the AC on all the time, brothers and sisters. If we are someone who has a thermostat set on 75 or 72 or whatever it may be, that is a huge blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For you to get to your car and it's nice and cool. For you to get to your home and it's nice and cool. This is a luxury. We are not entitled to this. And for some people, they don't even have this. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be grateful and thankful for everything that we have. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have love, compassion, and understanding for all of those who don't have. And to understand that not everyone around us has everything that we have. And to remember this. May Allah allow us to remember this when we in our mind think of seeking those things that others have and we don't have. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.
يا عبادي الذين آمنوا إن أرضي واسعة فإياي فاعبدون كل نفس ذائقة الموت كل نفس ذائقة الموت ثم إلينا ترجعون والذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لنبوئنهم من الجنة غرفا تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها نعم أجر العاملين.